thank Sheikh Shawki Nazhar, who is the Deputy Director, Fatima Zahra, working for the center. Also, you have seen them, Badai is here. No?
Doctor, the sound. Please, there's no sound at all.
You can't hear me? No
Sound
sound?
are not working.
Maybe the mic is not working.
No, I don't have to. You have to fix it.
Okay. If I speak like this louder, is that okay?
Yes, if you use a louder voice, I like
اللي حيحصل خلاص. Is that okay if I speak like this? If I can't end the lecture, it's not of my. I will try my best. Is that okay? Can you hear in Arabic? ممكن بالعربي خلاص. خلاص. Translation. Translation is okay. Okay, I wanted to thank Badia was here, Nawahib also was with us, and the new professors who are here with us, Dr. Shempliti with us here, who is in charge of the field of politics, Dr. Ghali in charge of bioethics, and Ahuna Mukhtar Lahmar, who will also come and join, inshallah, soon the center in Manhajiyya, everything which has to do with the methodology, and then inshallah we will follow what we are doing, and I want to welcome you all this evening for the first lecture. Let me start with this discussion about education, and as you saw, we put education and also training, teaching, because we have a problem which is the starting point. When it starts with education, the problem is a problem of definition of understanding. So as an introduction, I want to raise three main points, and then come to the substance of the lecture. Is there a problem?
So what I was saying is the problem that we have with the understanding, the definition of education. And what I want to do with you today is not to come to something which is a simple discussion about what are the priorities and some of the objectives of education. I think that what we need, coming from an ethical background, but also questioning what is done in the field of education and training and anything which has to do with how do we transmit knowledge, is to ask some essential questions about why and how do we want to transmit the knowledge, and what is, from an Islamic perspective, the useful knowledge, al-ilm al-nafi' that we are talking about. So my main problem here, and that this is why I want to start is the introduction, is about the concept that we are using. In fact, in Arabic, we find two words, and in other languages we have exactly the same, which is a bit difficult when it comes to English. التربية والتعليم. Education, and in English we say training. It's, in fact, the التعليم is transmitting knowledge. Education is not only transmitting knowledge, is knowledge and behavior. Is what we are talking about. Education is how do we get the knowledge, but also how do we educate in a way where we are talking about transforming the behavior, reforming the behavior, getting the right way of behaving within a society. And this is التعليم والتربية from an Islamic perspective is something which is even more complex than this. We have it in French. We also have Éducation and instruction, which is transmitting knowledge, and also the way we are dealing with educating. Very often what we have as something which is a fragmentation of roles, we say education is for the parents, and instruction or ta'lim is for the educators, is for school and the teachers. This is where I think that from the very beginning we have to be very cautious with the terms that we are using and try to understand what we are talking about, because from where we start, my main point here is, in our understanding, the way we transmit the knowledge and the useful knowledge is not only the way you think, it's the way you think and the way you behave. It's the way you behave is what you think. It's the way you have to reform your way of thinking to the way you behave. This relationship between behaving and thinking is essentially everything that we are now doing. Let me come to some of the crises that we have in the contemporary educational systems around the world. If you listen to some anthropologists and some people who are dealing with educationists, who are dealing with the field, we have a very big problem now. And the problem is this fragmentation of knowledge. In fact, you can be very, very deep in every field. The problem, what is missing now, is the comprehensive understanding of all the knowledges together. So when it comes to, for example, medical sciences, sometimes you can be very, very sharp and very deep in understanding the way organs are working, but we lose the understanding of what is a person. We have exactly the same in economy, we have exactly the same in this fragmentation of knowledge. And there is someone, Edgar Morin, a French anthropologist, who was saying one of the big crises of the Western education or the Western system is this fragmentation of knowledge. It's rationality pushed to the end, while the comprehensive understanding of what a rational way to deal with knowledge is lost. So it can be deep with a part and lost with the whole. So this is why we have to be very cautious. If we have to say something, if we have to add something, if we want to be a contribution from where we are, from our specific universe of reference as Muslims, it's important not to lose the comprehensive way, to come to be as efficient as we can when it comes to part and to some areas, but never to lose the comprehensive understanding of the whole knowledge. How do we integrate this? And this is why ethics is so important, because ethics is always not only what you know, but why do you know what you know? What do you want to achieve? What are the ends of knowledge? And what do you want to achieve in this? And this is where, for us, there is the first main understanding. And when it comes to this, in our discussion, and very often I see this, when it comes to interfaith dialogue, when it comes to us being involved in discussion with other specialists, in education, for example, it could be in sociology, it could be in human sciences, it could be in exact sciences, very often we go straight to the field and we start our discussion about our mutual understanding of what education could be. But there is one thing which is missing. And exactly the same, in fact, when it comes to interfaith dialogue. The first question that you have to ask is not about what you transmit, which knowledge you transmit, but what is your concept of human being. In fact, education is about educating the human being. And first, what you need to get is, what is your definition? What do you expect? How do you understand the human being? Because at the end, what you want, education is about what? I go along with you, at one point, I let you go your own way. So this is to educate someone, is to make him or her autonomous. But to make you autonomous means I have an idea of who you have to be. What is to be? And in our discussion, and this is not a philosophical discussion, this is the deepest spiritual discussion that should be started with. And this is why Muslims sometimes, they deal with the means and forget the first understanding of what is education and what we have to deal with when it comes to human being. Who are you and what are you trying to know and what do you want to do with what you know? From an Islamic perspective, this is where we have to start, and this is the main point that I wanted to start with as a prerequisite to our discussion. I think that in our discussion from within the Islamic tradition, but also in our dialogue with other civilizations, with people who are coming from different religious background, philosophical background, we need to start from the very beginning, and us, with our own self, to stop coming to something which is importing models of education without understanding the substance of what we want to transmit. Meaning by this, that we have very efficient educational systems in the West when it comes to the know-how and when it comes to mastering a specific object and area. Does it mean that coming from the West today, in the educational systems, we are targeting and we are not facing a crisis as to the real objectives of education? This is why I think we have to be very, very cautious when we import the models and not question the ends. This is what we are doing now. We want to be as efficient as the West in what? In the means, in the substance, or in the ends. Questioning the ethical dimension of what we are trying to teach. And this is why I want to start, and this will be the first part of my talk today. Sorry. I'm trying to speak quite loud. Do you hear me? Okay? Alhamdulillah. So the first thing that I wanted to say is, from where we are, And you may think that I'm starting very far from the topic when it comes to ethics in education. But when it comes to Islam, and we are trying to get our understanding of what a human being is, we should never forget the very positive dimension Islam is putting from the very beginning human being. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. He was talking about and referring to لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. The first testimony here is that there is something in us which is الفطرة فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. There is something in us which is a spark, which is a light, which is a very positive dimension. And this positive dimension is the very essence of everything which is going to be built when it comes to education. In education, if you want to educate, start with the positive. And from a Muslim viewpoint, what is very important is to start with the positive understanding that we have in the Quran from the very beginning. That we, from the very beginning, we have this positive, this something which is in us, which is the recognition there is transcendence. This is what we think as Muslims, but also the positive dimension of a human being, which is, by definition, innocent before becoming responsible. And this understanding of being innocent and then becoming responsible is going to be based on two things, which is essential in our understanding. When it comes to, and this is why, if you come back to some of the Usuliyin and all this literature that we have, when it comes to the fiqh and even the philosophers, be careful, be careful. In Islam, we have philosophies not only with philosophers. We have philosophy of law with fuqaha, with usuliyun. They were all dealing with a concept of human being. How do we deal with this? And our understanding of Sharia should be based on a very deep understanding of what a human being is and how do we deal with it. And there is two things which are essential. If you come to Ibn Ashur, for example, saying, you know what, everything which has to do with ethics in Islam has to start with a very deep understanding of al-fitra. Al-fitra, which is this disposition, natural disposition that we have, which is positive in human being. And as educators, as people who are dealing with the meaning of life, the way we have to deal with other human beings, the way we have to deal with nature, the way we have to deal with other communities is all based on this positive dimension. That is, there is something that we have to revive to get this essential nature of human being. In fact, educating is reconciliation. It's reconciliating the being with this very deep understanding. And it will have an impact. On what? The first impact and the first understanding here that we need to understand is two things that we can even find in a commentary, a tafsir. Ibn Kathir, when he's dealing with one verse, and we will find this also in Al-Qurtubi, and then you will find this in all what was said in, for example, the work that we find with Al-Maqasidiyun, for example, Al-Shatibi. وَلَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We give dignity to human beings. It's based on what? If you deal with students now, we have young students and you have to deal with them, you want to transmit to them. You need to understand that the very beginning of everything, Muslims or people of other faiths, is based on their dignity. It's based on what? What defines the dignity of human beings? Two things. The first, which is important, is their freedom. Is their freedom. The freedom which is a risk. قال ربك للملائكة إني جعل في الأرض خليفة أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء. Meaning, are you going to put on this earth somebody who's going to destroy, corrupt the world? Meaning what? With what? With his freedom. His freedom is a risk, but it's his dignity. This is his dignity. So freedom is essential. For us, in any educational system, if you don't deal with freedom in a positive way, you are acting against nature. You are acting against the dignity. So how you deal with your freedom is essential to avoid giving this freedom, because it's all based on what? To be a witness means you know how you deal with your freedom. It's not that your freedom is not acknowledged. It's there. And the second thing is what? وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. It's knowledge. So freedom and knowledge are the two legs that are defining the dignity of humanity, dignity of human being. And in anything which has to do with our fitra,